to the way I was. So I'm gonna live like my chains are gone, gone. Now my sin is dead and gone, and I sing hallelujah. Done, done. He is risen, it is done, and I sing hallelujah. Whoa, whoa. Praise is a weapon that will overcome. So I'm gonna shout like the battle's won. Hey! Fall back, devil, 'cause your time is up. So I'm gonna live like the stone is gone, gone. Now my sin is dead and gone, and I sing hallelujah. Yeah. Done, done. He is risen, it is done, and I sing hallelujah. Yeah, how great the power of the cross. Whoa, 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 whoa. I am the righteousness of God. Whoa, 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 whoa. How great the power of the cross. Whoa, 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 whoa. I am the righteousness of God. Yeah. Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, whoa, let's sing this out. Gone, gone. Now my sin is dead and gone, and I sing hallelujah. Done, done. He is risen, it is done, and I sing hallelujah. Yeah. Gone, gone. Now my sin is dead and gone, and I sing hallelujah. Done, done. He is risen, it is done, and I sing hallelujah. Whoa, 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 yeah. Whoa, 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 whoa. Now the darkness fades into new beginning as we lift our eyes to a hope beyond. All creation waits for an expectation to declare the reign of the Lord our God. Hey! We will not be moved when the earth gives way, for the risen one is overcome. And for every fear, there's an empty grave, for the risen one is overcome. Now the silence breaks in the name of Jesus, as the heavens cry, let the earth respond. All creation shouts with the voice of triumph to declare the reign of the Lord our God. declare this. Sing it out. He shall reign forever, strongholds now surrendered for the Lord. Our God is overcome. Who can be against us? Jesus, our defender, He is Lord, and He has overcome. He shall reign forever, strongholds now surrendered for the Lord. Our God is overcome. Who can be against us? Jesus, our defender, He is Lord, and He has overcome. We will not be moved when the earth gives way. For the reason one is overcome, yes, He has. And for every fear, there's an empty grave. For the reason one is overcome, we will not be moved when the earth gives way. For the reason one is overcome. Whoa, and for every fear, there's an empty grave. For the reason one is overcome.
Well, good morning, Quest Church and friends who might be watching us from all over the country and even the world. It's incredible that you've been joining us online, and we appreciate that so much. My name's Jim Dunn. I'm the lead pastor here at the Quest. Now, before you turn that thing off because you're like, it's that guy again, the music's over, we're going back to sleep, hold on a second, okay? Two things you might want to know today. Number one, we have an incredible guest speaker who I'll be introducing in just a moment, and the band does have another song at the end of the message today, so you might want to stay tuned in, all right? Unlike other Sundays, and hey, I get it too. I wouldn't want to listen to me all the time either, all right? No, we are so thankful that you're watching with us, man. Miss you so much, those of you who are part of the Quest Church, and I'm looking forward to us getting back together. We hope soon. I know you'll be praying about that. And if we can pray for you, remember right there on the homepage of the website or through the app, you can submit your prayer request. We will be praying for you. The prayer team, I'll send those out. They'll pray for you unless you mark that confidential. We want to make sure that we're praying for you during this time. If we can help in any way, there's a button right there on the homepage that says, I need help in some way. Your church is still here for you. We're still here to serve you. And so if there's anything we can do for you, even though we're not able to gather together, we want you to know that we're here for you. This is a fantastic day. I hope it's been a great day so far for all the moms. Man, we celebrate you today on Mother's Day. I hope that your family has been good to you already this morning. If they haven't, then shame on you. All right, take care of your mom today. And as I said, we have got a special message today from my quarantine buddy and also one of the greatest moms that I know. And I think our kids would say that too. I'm not just saying that because I have to. My wonderful wife, Meredith Dunn, is going to come in just a few minutes and share a message of inspiration and encouragement today for all ladies, but especially for moms. And then, guys, you probably should listen to this. We might learn something today, and so go ahead and hang in there and listen in as well. And she's going to get that started, her talk today, with a little video to deal with some of the mom challenges that moms face, all right? Watch this, and then you'll join me in welcoming Meredith Dunn today.
My children have big fears in life. They are convinced that certain things might kill them. And being the good mom that I am, I'm going to do some research to see if that's the case. For example, one of my children left this container here on the counter after finishing it instead of recycling it. So I'm going to check if throwing this away will hurt me. Nope, I'm good. Putting a dirty dish that you personally dirtied up into the sink. Now, I see how this can be terrifying because the sink is basically a big hole. Here we go. Just kidding, all good. Now this one is puzzling for me. The dirty underwear is right next to the laundry basket, but not inside. I don't know what will happen. Keep your fingers crossed, people. Okay, I feel no physical pain. Emotionally, no, I'm feeling good. I'm gonna try it left-handed just for research purposes. Not traumatized at all. Let me try it with my eyes closed. I see darkness. I feel dirty underwear. No, I will not be needing therapy for this. I'm feeling as healthy as can be. Closing cabinets and drawers after opening them. Now, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little nervous about this one because my children make it out to seem impossible. So I'm gonna stretch it out. Deep breath. Here we go. Didn't even break a sweat. That's weird. Now this one might actually end my life. So I have some pain medication, Band-Aids, and I have 911 on speed dial. If I don't make it, tell my loved ones, thank you for everything. I'm alive. I'm alive. I'm alive. Oh, and putting this in the trash won't kill you either.
Well, good morning. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope maybe that doesn't pertain in your home. I don't know. I don't have any children left in my house. It still pertains in my house. Not saying who my quarantine buddy is. But I also want to clarify something this morning. If I do not have any growth in my back here, I realized after I got dressed this morning that wearing a dress with no pockets, there's nowhere to put the mic pack. So pray, it's hooked to the back of my strapless bra. So I won't be moving around much this morning. But this is Meredith. This is the way, this is Mother's Day, it's women friendly today, not men friendly maybe. But I do want to speak to the women during this very unusual time we have right now, the pandemic that's gone worldwide. I think you've noticed this by now. But I do realize that there are some pros and cons to all of this. And so I was trying to think about, there are some good things and bad things during all this time. Some of the good stuff, I've loved seeing the people having the bike rides, the families out, doing games together, puzzles together. They're taking walks together, seeing people do more family time, the drive-by birthday parties, all that's been so much fun. But I do know there are some cons too. I don't particularly like standing in line outside Costco, but I do like the way the fast lines are going at checkout. So, it kind of evens out. One of the cons, I will admit, is this. I do not particularly care for face masks. I'm claustrophobic, and so something on my face really kind of bothers me. But there are some pros to this. As a woman now, you only have to do eye makeup, and you look done for the day. Just eye makeup. If you put on a lot of bronzer, you look very tan, and no one knows. Now, when you take it off, it's shocking, but I'm kind of enjoying that. The other thing that I'm enjoying is I have a very bad case of RBF. And if you don't know what that means, Google it or ask Lori Steiniger. She will explain it to you. So I do have RBF. So when I'm at the stores, I've been told I have to smile at people or I scare them. So I walk around smiling a lot. I like the face mask. I don't have to smile. I can walk around with my RBF and it's all good. And if I see somebody I don't like, I can stick my tongue out at them and they don't even know it. So it's childish, it's immature, but once again, this is Meredith. So enjoying the pros and cons. But I am a little upset about one big thing. This is a major con for me. And that is finding out how splendid I am during all of this. And I'm not being conceited. I'm not being full of myself. I am truly more splendid than I ever imagined. And I know this because of Proverbs 20:29. And that verse says, "The glory of the young is their strength, and the gray hair of experience is the splendor of the old." And believe me, I have never been more splendid in all my life. And I didn't want to know how much splendor I had. And if you're thinking, oh, it doesn't look that bad, I used a marker and painted this morning. And I'm not lying. If you see me out today, you can come up and touch my head. I'll wear my mask. But yes, it's painted. It won't move today because that is brown marker. That is covering up the splendor that I have. So there are some pros, there are some cons to all of this. But one of the big things I have loved is during social media, seeing the women building each other up for a change. That's been awesome. You know, people have posted everything from, I built an entire house, decorated it, landscaped it, and poured a pool out back in 3 weeks' time. I'm amazing. New Joanna Gaines here, to the women who are like, we're all still in our pajamas, we're all at home. They had Pop-Tarts all 3 meals, but everyone survived the day. And everyone applauds both of them and goes, great job, you did good. And I have loved seeing that part of it during all this, the social media of just building people up, the women taking care of each other. And so I wanted to speak today to the mothers who are at home during all of this, but I also want to speak to all women, whether you are going to be a mother one day, whether you're not going to be a mother. This applies to all women, and I think it applies to men too. But men, I am going to speak to women and refer to them. Your time comes in June, and Jim will take care of y'all. So I want to talk to the women about being warriors of the mundane. And that kind of seems strange to think about. But all of us women, mothers or not, we're all women, we're warriors. And we don't think of ourselves as that sometimes, but warriors, the definition is to put others before self by defending or fighting for a people or a cause. And so I think we all do that, especially with our families. I know I do. I am a mother. I have 4 children. We have 2 boys, and then we had 2 girls. Our kids range from 27 to 22. And 3 of my kids are married. So I now have 2 daughter-in-laws and a son-in-law. And then I have Brinley, my granddaughter, the only one worth naming by name. And but then I have to admit, the one that is not married, she graduated college early. She has a good job. She has an apartment and a great savings account. She's the smartest one of my 4. But if you look at my family, you would think, okay, good family. If you look at me, you would think, warrior? I don't know. Well, if you hurt me or do something to me, I'll get over it. Despite what my kids think, if you hurt me, I won't hold a grudge. I can get past it and still be your friend. You do something to my husband or my kids, totally different story. The mama bear, the warrior will come out. And I will tell you, I'm praying through this. I'm trying to be a better, bigger person over this. And so when people do that I know have done these, come up and speak to me, I will speak to you kind of short, maybe very curtly. But I will warn you, you probably don't want to turn your back as you walk away from me. I'm still praying through this, working on that. But I am a warrior when it comes to my family. And so I want us women to see ourselves as warriors. And then when I get to speak on Mother's Day every year, I try to encourage the women to really get into the Bible and not see it the way I think the world sees it quite often. I think a lot of people see the Bible as not women-friendly, as not being something that really applies to us in some ways, because when we think of the women of the Bible, we come up with, off the top of our head, Eve at the beginning, that really screwed things up and started us in a deficit. And then we think of Mary over here, who was the woman blessed beyond all women and became the mother of the Son of God. And we're like, well, I'm not quite Eve, but I'm a lot closer to her than I am being the mother of the Son of God. And so we're just kind of like, I don't know where I fall in there. But there are so many other women in the Bible that I think we don't realize and we don't give credit to. See, when you look at women in the Bible, there are warriors in the Bible. There are leaders of not only families, but of nations that were women at times. There were business women, financial supporters of Jesus' ministry. There are these women that we don't really think about, but we should look more into it. Deborah, Jael, Abigail, Lydia, Anna, all these women that did incredible things. But only 2 women have books in the Bible named after them. And so we think that maybe God doesn't see men and women as equal, but he does. God created man and woman equal. He created both of us in his image. Us women just happen to be the prettier, less hairy version of his image. But I'm telling you, women, if you don't go get waxed quick, that other may not be true anymore. But the thing is, we confuse when we read the Bible the man-made laws or the cultures made by men at that time with God. And God did not intend some of this to be the way it was. It was the man-made thing. So don't ever confuse those two when you're reading and going, well, God did this. God. No, man-made culture caused some of that to happen, not God. So I want us to look at Ruth today. There's only 4 chapters in the book of Ruth. It's very short, and I hope you'll read it this week because even if you're a slow reader, you could get done with it in 15 minutes. And it's a great story. It's a love story in some ways, and it's an inspiring story, but it shows us the love of God and putting plans and how he works in our lives even when we don't feel like he is or we don't feel like anything special is going on in our life, that it's just very mundane and plain, that God is in the middle of it even when we don't feel like it. So that's what I want to talk about in Ruth today. Now, as people know, my hobbies are watching movies and reading books. Very active person. So I love that. When I'm reading books, when I start reading about the characters, I always like to put a face to the characters in my books. I have a great, vivid imagination. It scares my husband to death. But the thing is, when I'm reading, even in the Bible, I kind of try to do that. In the book of Ruth, please don't get upset if you're a big Bible person at all, but the book of Ruth is the pretty woman story of the Bible, okay? And I'm not saying Ruth was a hooker, because she was not, okay? But when I think of her, I do think of Viv, if you've ever seen the movie, because she is looked down on and treated very badly by the people in the circle of Edward, Richard Gere's character. And Richard Gere was older and very wealthy, and that's the way our people are in this story. Ruth is going to be treated very differently. Boaz, our main male character, is an older gentleman who is very wealthy. So you'll have to excuse me. That's what I'm putting in your mind. Richard Gere, Julia Roberts, you can pick whoever you want to. That's who I look at, okay? I don't know if Moabite women had red hair or not, but that's what I'm going with. So our story starts with Naomi and her husband, who had a really long name, so we're going to shorten it to Eli. And so Naomi and Eli live in the land of Judah. They're Israelites, and they live in the town of Bethlehem. But a great famine happens there, and so Eli takes his wife and his 2 sons and moves to the land of Moab, which is really kind of strange because the Israelites and the Moabites did not get along. If you read in the Old Testament, there were always wars and conflicts going on between these 2 nations. There was a lot of racism and class discrimination between these 2 nations. They came from the same genealogy, but Abraham, some of you have been around long enough to hear the old stories, Father Abraham, that is what his line descended into the Israelites. His nephew Lot, his line, through some really bad things, became the Moabites. And the Moabites turned away from the one true God and worshiped idols and did not live their lives in the way that brought honor to God in any way. And so the Israelites looked at them as second class, if they looked at them at all. They just did not care for them, and they treated them badly and just did not think they were even on the same realm as them whatsoever. So they are there, and then while they are in this land, though, Eli dies and leaves Naomi behind 2 sons who have married 2 women from Moab, Orpah and Ruth. And then it says her sons die. Now, this is a bad thing for a woman in this time, and this is one of those man-made culture, man-made law things at the time. Women could not inherit land or businesses and all from their husbands. It went to the sons. And so women wanted lots of sons. They wanted lots and lots of sons because they would inherit everything, and then they would take care of their mother if anything happened to the father. Daughters were good to carry water and do things like that, but it was the sons that people really gave the most credit to. And so Naomi is left with no male heirs, but she decides, I don't want to live in a foreign country anymore. And so she decides to return to Bethlehem, her hometown, and she's found out the famine's over with. So she's getting ready to leave. And in Ruth chapter 1, it says, Naomi said to her 2 daughter-in-laws, go back to your mother's homes, and may the Lord reward you for your kindness to your husbands and to me. May the Lord bless you with the security of another marriage. And then she kissed them goodbye and they all broke down and wept. Now, the reason this is important is because in the Israelite culture, the women would have married another male in Eli's family to get an heir to carry on Eli's name. But she's releasing them from all that. They're Moabites. She wants them to return to their family. I have two daughter-in-laws, as I mentioned. Emily and Brianne are wonderful daughter-in-laws, but they're very close with their families. I can't imagine them doing what happens next, as much as I love them, and I kind of hope they love me. But in verse 14, just below that, it said, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung tightly to Naomi. Look, Naomi said to her, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods, little g, and you should do the same. But Ruth replied, don't ask me to leave you and turn back. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. And she goes on to say, wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us. And that's pretty powerful. What we see there is Naomi had lived her life in a way and talked about her faith and her relationship with God in a way that had impacted and changed the eternal life of Ruth. Ruth had turned her back on her little gods, on the idols and everything that she had been raised with since childhood, and had realized the one true God, the real God, and she had accepted him into her life. And she referred to him as Lord, which meant she had a relationship going there, and it was because of what Naomi, just living her life out, had done. And if you think that is something kind of hard to understand or can't quite grasp, but I encourage you to listen to the message Jim did last week over sharing your faith just in your daily life, and go back and watch that, because that's exactly what Naomi had done and changed Ruth's whole life from there on out. So they go on back to Bethlehem, and they travel together. But when they get there, like I said, Naomi doesn't have the land. She doesn't have money. She has no way of taking care of the family. She's an older woman. And so Ruth is going to take care of Naomi. Naomi has impacted her life in such a way that now she wants to give back. And in those days, they arrived in Bethlehem during the barley harvest. And during the harvest, the men would go out and they would cut the stalks, and the heads of the stalks, as they kind of shook, grain would fall out of them. Well, they would take the stalks, but they left the grain that fell off the heads of the stalks on the ground, and the poor and the orphans and the widows could come by and in the ground get the seed that was dropped and have that to make their food out of. Now, if you've ever picked in a garden, you know you're bent over picking off of a vine. I can't even imagine being on my hands and knees trying to get grain out of the dirt and get enough to make a loaf of bread to get me through. But that's exactly what Ruth is willing to do. So she goes out into the field. She just picks a field, not knowing that she didn't just pick a field. God kind of orchestrated and planned this. So she's in the field working. And as I said, she's a Moabite. She's different than the Israelites, probably looked different, had a different accent. And so she's not with the other women. They're not going to treat her the same. And she's set apart, we see in these next few verses. She's kind of off by herself. And she's collecting the grain and working as hard as she can. And then the owner of the field shows up. And it seems to be close to lunchtime when the man gets there. His name is Boaz. And he's very wealthy. He has a foreman that runs the harvest crews and takes care of all the fields for him. So he gets there and he sees Ruth set apart from these others. And in chapter 2, verse 5, it says, Boaz asked his foreman, who is that young woman over there? Who does she belong to? And so the foreman explains to him that this is the Moabite widow that came back with Naomi. Now, Boaz is actually a relative of Eli, Naomi's late husband. And so kind of a family kinship in there. And so he tells his men, look out for her. And he invites her into the tent where they're having their lunch, shares their bread and wine with her. And then when they all go back into the fields, he pulls the men aside and said, okay, when you see Ruth, I want you to go ahead and break a few of the heads off the stalk and drop behind for her to pick up. And then this is what he says in verse 16. Let her pick them up and don't give her a hard time. That's with an exclamation point. And throughout that chapter, if you read, several times he mentions that nobody's to touch or bother her. Because as a Moabite woman, she didn't have the protection and the laws over her like the Israelite women did. And those field hands, the men that worked in the fields, could have sexually harassed her, accosted her, or hurt her in some way, and it wouldn't have really been a big deal. And so he gave her protection and warned them. And obviously, we see no one touched her. So either Boaz was a big burly guy that no one wanted to mess with, or he had the authority and respect of the men. But one way or another, they did not bother her. So Ruth's working, and we find out she's been there for several months now. Still in chapter 2, verse 23 said, So Ruth worked alongside the women in Boaz's field and gathered grain with them until the end of the barley harvest. Then she continued working with them through the wheat harvest in early summer. And all the while she lived with her mother-in-law. If you notice in there, it says now she worked alongside the women. Something about Ruth had changed their viewpoint of the Moabite women, or at least of her. And now she's alongside of them. She's working with them. She's been included. And if you're a woman, you know how hard that can be to be the new woman, try to get into the circle of a group that's been around for a long time, especially as an outsider like she would have been. So something about the way she carried herself, about the way she talked, her actions, just her attitude made these women go, okay, she's not like we would have thought a Moabite woman was. She may be. And they brought her in. And I do believe it was because of the love she had for God and the loyalty she was showing to Naomi, because it says all this while she lived with her mother-in-law. She was an attractive lady. Obviously, Boaz noticed her right away. He had to warn the men to leave her alone. And she was young. She could have found, it says in these chapters, young men, old men, rich, poor. She could have found a man, gotten married, and gone, I'm through with this. I'm not working this hard. I'm going to have a house and have kids and just take care of the house and let him work. But she didn't, because her priority, her loyalty was to taking care of Naomi. And her life, her mundane, ordinary, everyday life of gathering grain out of the ground, going home, helping probably crush it up, make some bread, go to sleep, get up the next morning, go out and do it all again. She would have done this 6 days a week, day in, day out. Repeat, sleep, repeat, sleep. She'd have had 1 day of rest and to worship God on the day of the Sabbath, and then right back to work. Much like we are in the pandemic. I know we get up, we cook, we clean, we work, we school. It's just crazy. And then we go to sleep and we get up the next morning and we repeat. It's kind of like Groundhog Day. We're just doing the same thing over and over and over. It's mundane. It's monotonous. And that's exactly what Ruth was going through. Yet through this, God was orchestrating something much bigger. So the end of the harvest has come. And at the end of the harvest, they would have a big festival, a huge party. And it would be outside of town, near where their fields were. And all the field hands, everyone would be invited. And you would all go to the different fields that you worked in. And there would be wine, it said there. And so when Ruth gets home, Naomi goes, you're going to the party. And I want you to take a bath. Good thing to do before you go to a party. You've been working in the fields. Go take a bath, girl. So she goes, I want you to take a bath. I want you to put on perfume, put on your nicest dress. I want you to look really nice tonight. If you've ever seen Pretty Woman, work it, girl. Okay, so she's, I told you, it's the mind of mine. You don't want to go there. But she gets all cleaned up and ready, and she gets very, very detailed instructions from Naomi of what she's supposed to do when she gets there. And Ruth obviously has respect and trust for Naomi because these instructions are very strange and weird, yet she does exactly what her mother-in-law tells her to do. She gets to the party, but she doesn't go right in and join everybody. She stands around the outer edge and just watches until everybody finishes up and goes home. And somehow Naomi knew that Boaz would spend the night there by himself right by his big pile of grain. Now, I don't know if that's because he was protecting it from thieves, or if maybe she knew he was going to drink too much wine and wasn't going to walk across the street to his house or whatever, but he was sleeping there. And Ruth did what Naomi told her to do, which probably didn't make sense to her at the time either. She went to Boaz while he's sleeping. She uncovered his feet, and then she laid down at the end of his feet. Now, if you want to wake me up in the middle of the night, you uncover my feet, but I'm going to be kicking and I'm going to be mad because my feet are now cold. And so that's exactly what Boaz did. He wakes up, he goes to cover up his feet and realizes somebody's laying down there, and he's a little startled, and he's like, who is that? And she sits up and she goes, it's Ruth, and I have to ask you something. And Boaz goes, what is it, Ruth? Why are you here? What do you want? And she goes, will you cover me with your blanket and protect me. Now, that sounds weird. She's not propositioning Boaz in that way. She's actually proposing to Boaz. She's asking Boaz to marry her. Now, men, you would have wished you lived back then. No diamonds. Just give me a blanket. I'm happy, okay? So there was some good things in this time. But he loves Ruth, and he says, yes, I want to marry you. Except there's one problem. There is one relative that's closer in the line than I am. But he tells Ruth, don't worry about it. I will take care of it. And they stayed together that night. I don't know if they talked through the night, if he just covered her up, they went back to sleep. But he gets up and early in the morning and sends her back to Naomi before the sun's up and tells her to hurry, sends her even with some grain to make food for the day. And he tells her, hurry, don't let anybody see you. I don't want your reputation ruined because somebody thinks something happened here tonight that didn't happen. He had protected her physically before. Now he's protecting her reputation. He's taking care of her, watching out for her. So he goes in chapter 4 to the city gates of Bethlehem. Now, the city gates back then is where all of the businesses were taken care of. All business transactions happened here. And he's sitting there waiting for the uncle to come by. And he sees him and he hollers, hey, come on over here, uncle. I need to talk to you for a minute. And the uncle comes over and sits down. And then he calls 10 men out of the crowd that's going to the city and asks them to be witnesses. So now everybody knows, oh, he has 10 witnesses. There's a business transaction going here. We need 10 witnesses to make this a binding contract here, whatever's about to happen. So the uncle sits down and Boaz goes, you know, Eli's widow, Naomi, she's back. And Eli had all that land out there and she needs somebody to take the land, to buy the land. And so I just want to know, do you want to buy the land? Or, because if you don't, I would like to buy it. But, you know, it's kind of like today that he had first refusal rights to this land. And so he goes, so if you want to buy it, that's fine. I just need to know whether I need to take care of it or not. Well, land and property was just as important then and just as valuable then as it is now, if not more so. And so the uncle's like, well, yeah, I want to buy the land. I'll buy it. And Boaz goes, okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. Oh, by the way, Eli did have daughter-in-laws and one of them did come back. So you're going to have to marry the Moabite widow. Now, interesting how Boaz throws that in there. Number one, he doesn't name her. He uses the derogatory name for her, the Moabite widow. The uncle probably was working in his fields. He hasn't seen Ruth. He doesn't really know who she is. Boaz kind of puts that in there. And then he goes, that way, you know, when y'all do have a son, that son will inherit the land, not your kids. Okay, so the uncle is either married or has been married, which probably was married. Men could have multiple wives at this time, another man-made culture, law thing, not God intended. And this man looks up and goes, I don't want that Moabite widow. I got one woman. I don't want another, okay? I don't know if that's really what he said, but that's, you know, that's what my husband would have said, I promise you. So he goes, no, I don't want it. You can have it. She is not worth it. And Boaz goes, oh, okay. I'll marry the Moabite widow if you don't want to. And Boaz goes, finds Ruth, and we find out that he does marry her. And right after he marries her, she becomes pregnant and gives birth to a son. And she keeps her promise right up to the end, because as the book is ending in the chapter 4, we find out that Naomi is living in the home with Boaz and Ruth, and they are taking care of her just like she promised they would. And she's going to get to help raise her grandson. Now, this wasn't something strange. This happened a lot, families living together, coexisting and working together. But she's holding her grandson, and all of her family and friends come in to see Naomi holding this child. And in chapter 4, verses 15 and 16, it says, the women told her, may this child be famous in Israel. May he restore your youth and care for you in your old age. For he is the son of your daughter-in-law who loves you and has been better to you than 7 sons. Now imagine that. They just gave Ruth the highest compliment possible. I told you, women wanted sons so bad because they were better than girls at the time. But they're saying, Ruth, you could have had 7 sons and they would not have been as good to you. They would not have taken care of you and been as loyal and loving to you as Ruth has. They give her this huge compliment. And then the next verse is kind of a mic drop moment as the book ends. It says, and they named him Obed. He became the father of Jesse and the grandfather of David. Now, even if you haven't read the Bible a lot, or maybe haven't read the Bible at all, a lot of us have still heard the story of David and Goliath. And that's who this David is. He is the King David, that later is the most powerful man in the Old Testament, in the world at that time. He's taking care of this huge nation. He was a warrior. He has so many stories and things written about him in the Bible. He wrote things in the Bible. David was an incredible man. And Ruth was his great-grandmother. See, a woman whose life was mundane changed the trajectory and the legacy of her family. She turned away from her Moabite raising and from the idols and everything that she had before. She turned away from that and turned to the one true God, and she lived her life for him and became a part of the legacy of the Son of God. Because, see, King David was direct line down to Jesus Christ, the King of all kings. Ruth became the great, however many greats it is, grandmother of Jesus Christ. So if you ever think that God doesn't care about women, I want you to look back at this story. It's a story of, if you notice, the name of the book is Ruth. He could have had this story told from the point of Boaz and been the book of Boaz, or from Obed growing up and telling about his parents and been the book of Obed. But no, he named this book after Ruth. He also proved that he doesn't care about race, because in the blood of Jesus Christ is Moabite and Israelite mixed in there. That part, God created all people. He doesn't care. And the other thing is, when you read Ruth, you see there are no miracles. There's no lightning strike moments. There's no visions. There's no dreams from God. There's no angel visits or anything. It's just the story of Ruth, a woman who lived her mundane, at times sad, hard life. It wasn't perfect, but yet she carried herself and shared her love for God in a way that influenced the circle of people around her, that they would include her and make her a part of their world. And she changed her family and her legacy. This is what I want you women to realize, and especially you mothers. Right now, as we're still in this pandemic and we're still spending so much time with our families, and I know you're getting frustrated. I understand that. I can only imagine what it's like trying to work a full-time job at home and raise the children, or trying to figure out how to make the money stretch because hours have been cut or jobs have been furloughed, or we're working at home, not only ourselves and homeschooling the kids, but we have our husbands there at home too, and it's just a whole different dynamic. But here's the thing. In these moments, you have the greatest impact in the lives of your family, now more so than ever. Because more than ever before, you have more time with them. You get to speak to them more. They get to see your life day to day. They get to see how you live your life out. Now more than ever, you have the chance to impact the moral fiber, their integrity, everything, and teach the kids about God in a way that you never had the opportunity to do before, because you're with them so much more often and doing their schooling there at home. It could be a burden or it could be a blessing. 2 Corinthians, in the New Testament, Paul is talking about the difficulties that he's going through, and he's quoting Jesus, and Paul said, each time he, being Jesus, said, "My grace is all you need. My power works best in your weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ can work through me." Paul understood sometimes we're done, we're over it, we're through. And I know as women we get like that. I don't even have children at home, and I've had days like that through this. Just being at home. I have worked from home the last couple of months. I'm an extrovert, so being at home has been difficult. And I just can't even imagine when you're there with your kids and your husband, and you can't get out, and things are hard, and you're trying to figure out how do we manage all this. But that's when you go, God, you've got to show up and show out, because I'm done. I'm weak right now. And that's when he does get to come in and show his love for you and your family. It's not always easy. It's not always fun. But in our mundane, everyday lives is where God wants to show up. Sometimes we think as women, well, I'm not anything great. I don't do any great ministry. I don't impact people. Yes, you do. You impact your family. You are setting the trajectory for your family. Yes, the men do too, but women, we have such a great influence in that. You know, I called us warriors of the mundane, but you are not a warrior for the things you do every day, washing dishes and that kind of stuff. You're a warrior because of the legacy you fight to leave behind and because of the eternity of people that has changed because of your life and your faithfulness during your mundane life, living it for God. Women, you are warriors for God. You're warriors for your family. And He's asking you to help set the legacy. Because when you live your life to honor God just throughout the everyday life, just doing what's right, your kids see it, they watch it. And if you impart that and teach that to them, then they teach it to their kids, and then that legacy is changed forever. And so I want to encourage you women right now through this difficult, hard, mundane, monotonous times. Don't give up. Ask God to come in and give you the strength you need when you're weak. Ask Him to be the warrior that your family needs. Let's pray. God, I thank you so much for the women who have joined us online today. Pray, Lord, that you will touch their lives. Help them, God, to seek you during their weaknesses, to turn to you during the difficult times. But more than that, God, help them just to know that just living their day-to-day life, showing their kids how to honor you by doing what's right, by the way they speak, by the way they talk, their actions, the way they love others, the way they put others before themselves, take care of other people, just the things us moms do day to day. Help them realize that that is what God wants us to do, and that's how He's going to use us to take care of our families, to impact them, to change the legacy, and to leave a legacy behind that honors you, and that us as women always remember that we are indeed warriors.
so much, Quest Band. Mandy, fantastic job. And man, I'm probably a little biased on this thing, but that was an incredible message from Meredith today of challenge and inspiration for us all as we live our lives and so often think that the mundaneness of it is nothing special. And yet in the midst of that, God's doing incredible things that are yet to be revealed. And I hope none of you who watch that message today ever forget that. And certainly moms, as we celebrate you today and all those daily tasks that you're doing that may seem so mundane and so unimportant, you're doing a powerful work for God. And maybe there's a mom or even a dad or anybody out there today who you saw something in this message about a woman whose life changed because she began to follow the one true God. She'd been raised to believe in all kinds of gods, and yet in Naomi, she saw the power of following the one true God. And as she began to live for that one true God, her legacy was established forever. And I wonder if today's not a day that you would take a next step in getting to know the one true God. We just finished a series called What Do Christians Believe? And in that we learned that Christians believe we have right relationship with this one true God through his son, Jesus Christ, who gave his life as the sacrifice to pay the price for our sins. And we believe in him because he rose from the dead, and it changes everything. And if you've never done that, could I invite you to take a next step today? Right there in your home, would you call out to the one true God and say, I want to know you, and I want to know you through your son, Jesus. I invite you to come into my life today. I will be a follower of Jesus. And if that's a choice you're making, we'd love to help you with that. I know we can't meet together personally right at this moment, but I'd love to send you a gift from our church. It's a New Believer's Bible, and I know you may say, well, I have a Bible, I've tried to read the Bible before, but we think this will help. It's written in a modern translation of English, more understandable, just like Meredith taught you the scripture today in a very understandable way. It talks about Jesus and the life of those who followed him and why we would believe in him. And then it has some common question and answers you might ask to kind of get you started. And so that's a free gift from our church. If you want to take a next step in following Jesus, would you just go to our website or on the app and use that prayer button that I mentioned earlier? And just let me know, Jim, I want to receive that free gift of the Bible. Just send me the Bible, just that simple. Make sure I've got your mailing address, and we'll drop that in the mail to you this week. It's just a way that we maybe can help you on this journey and want you to know that we're here for you in any way that we can be. Again, we appreciate you so much making time in your day and your schedule to join us online, even as we've been doing for these past few weeks. Now, the question you may have is, hey, are we going to be able to get back together soon? And I certainly hope so. You know, that's been my prayer from the very beginning. And we are working through our processes. I'll meet this week with our leadership team, with some folks that are helping advise us on that. And we'll wait on Governor Abbott's next announcement as well. But I would hope, and our dream is, and our goal is that we'll be able to open back up next week in a larger capacity, still a limited capacity for some folks to get back to church. You'll just need to be on the lookout for information from me via email and video this week. When I have more details, I'll let you know. And regardless of whether we're able to be in the building or not next week, I hope that you'll join us. I'm going to be doing a message called Quarantine Marriage. And as Meredith talked about, there are things happening during this unprecedented time in our lives that are good and also bad, and your marriage has probably been impacted in both ways. And we're going to talk about some lessons maybe that we've learned during this quarantine, this shelter-at-home period, that we need to keep doing in order to have the marriages that bring health and strength and life to us that God created us for. So I hope you'll join us next week. Same bat time, same bat channel for Quarantine Marriage. God bless you. Mothers, happy Mother's Day again. We love you. We've got a gift for you when we do get back together. It's our tradition to give the moms a gift, and we have that gift for you when we can get back together. Hope that your day is a great day. You are officially, virtually, whatever it is, dismissed.